All right, boys and girls, here are the answers to the assignment we gave you today. This is a mix of 81 and 82. So for the first one, we have a multiplication of two monomials, but you first have to distribute, and everything goes to the power of 2. Negative 2 squared, m squared, and n all get squared, but I'm going to put parentheses around because it is one monomial. And then I'm just going to copy this down next. So now we have the multiplication of two monomials. So anything that has the base of m could be multiplied. So this is like m to the first times m to the second. Remember, when you multiply, you add. So you get m to the third. Then n squared times n to the seventh becomes n to the ninth. The x doesn't have anything to multiply by, so it stays as negative 1. And then negative 2 squared. This you can solve because it's okay that it's a negative base, so you get 4. And then 4 times 3 is 12. And you're not done yet because you have a negative exponent, so you would have to, that goes to the denominator, so you get mm cubed, n to the ninth power, all over x to the first, which I could just write as x. The next one. All right, here's a division problem of two monomials, but before we start, we have to make sure we distribute. Everything gets that 4. So 2 to the fourth I can actually solve. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. X goes to the fourth power, and then remember, you have a power to another power, so you have to multiply, and that's how you get y to the 12th, and that is all over 3x squared y. Now, 3 over 16 does not reduce, so we're going to leave it as 3 over 16. Then you have x squared divided by x to the fourth. Well, that equals x to the negative second because you have 2 minus 4. But then that goes to the bottom as x to the second, the denominator. And then y to the first divided by y to the 12th, that's like 1 minus 12. And you end up with negative 11. So y to the negative 11, because it's negative, is dropped to the bottom as y to the 11th. And there's your final answer. Next one. All right. So again, everything, the negative 2 goes to every single term in this monomial. So negative 1/4 to the negative second. X, remember, you have to multiply the power to a power, so you get negative 4th. And the y actually becomes a positive 8. So first of all, let's make one long fraction bar. The y to the 8th is positive, so that's going to stay as y to the 8th. The x to the negative 4th goes to the bottom as x to the 4th. And now, remember, this negative 2 goes to both the numerator and the denominator. So I end up with negative 1 to the negative second and 4 to the negative second. Well, you can't solve those, so what you have to do is make sure that the 4 to the negative second is going to go to the numerator. So I'm going to put that right here as 4 to the second. And the negative 1 to the negative second is going to flip down to the denominator. Notice, though, that the 1 is still negative. It's the exponent that stays, that becomes positive. And last, I could simplify this a little bit because 4 to the second is 16, y to the 8th. And then negative 1 squared. Negative 1 times negative 1 is actually a positive 1. And since there's already an x to the fourth down there, I don't really need to write a 1 right here, but you could if you want. And there's your final answer. This one is a fairly easy one. You're going to remember, you're still dividing. 30 divided by 5 is 6. X to the 9th divided by x to the second. 9 minus 2 is x to the 7th. And y to the negative 7th divided by y to the negative 4th. So you're going to do negative 7 minus a negative 4. And that will get you y to the negative 3rd. Well, last step, remember, is to bring any negative exponents, flip them. It's going to flip to the bottom as y to the 3rd, and there's your final answer. This one, we first have to distribute the negative 2. So 3 to the negative second, n to the negative second, and m to the negative 14th. Remember, because you're multiplying a power to a power. And then I'm going to bring down my 4, my m, and my n to the 9th. Well, n divided by n, you can negative 2 minus 9. So that's going to equal n to the negative 11th. Well, that's going to go to the bottom as n to the 11th. The m to the negative 14th, minus 1 would be n to the negative 15th. So that is also going to go to the bottom as m to the 15th. And now you have a 4 down here, but you cannot solve 3 to the negative second. Remember, you have to flip it because it's a negative exponent to the bottom, the denominator, as 3 to the second. And then since there's nothing up top, I'm going to put a 1. Well, let's simplify this a little bit. 3 to the second is 9, and 9 times this 4 that's already down here is 36. So I end up with 36 m to the 15th n to the 11th over 1. Here's an area problem. Remember, area, always write down the formula, 1/2 the base times the height. So we have 1/2 the base is 3m squared n times 8mn, area equals. Now you could take half of either one of these, and taking half of 8 is really easy. So I'm going to make that 4mn. And now our last step is we have to multiply. So remember, multiply the numbers. 4 times 3 is 12. M times m squared. Remember, we add the exponents. You get m to the third. And n times n is n to the second. And there's your final answer, which is the area. So we should write feet, or whatever the units are, squared. 2 more. All right. Here you're finding the shaded area. So we want to find the area of the whole thing, which is 9x times 12x, which is 108x squared. Remember, it's x to the first and x to the first. That's the whole thing. Then the smaller area, this right here, which we're going to take away, is 4x times 3x, which equals 12x squared. Well, we're going to take the whole area and subtract the part that we don't want. And now, since both of these variables are x squared, well, you could just subtract 108 minus 12, and that'll get you your answer of 96. X squared would be the area. So we're just going to put, since there's not labeled in units, square units, because we're talking about area. And last one, which was seemed to be the hardest one, would be you first have to distribute this -2, remember, to everything, but we don't solve it because you cannot solve a negative exponent. The n becomes -16 because 8 times -2, and then the y becomes +8. I'm going to bring down the 4 to the negative second. Remember, you can't solve it because it's a negative exponent. And last, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's work with the fractions, the variables first. M, -2 divided by m to the 9th would be -2 minus 9. So that's -11, so it goes to the bottom as m to the 11th. This just cancels out, so you're left with n to the -16th, which goes to the bottom as n to the 16th in the denominator. And then here, your y's, you have 8 minus a -9, which ends up becoming 17. So that's y to the 17th, which will, since it's positive, will stay up top. Now, with the numbers, because they each have a negative exponent, you're just going to flip-flop them. So the -3 to the negative second goes to the denominator as -3 to the second, and 4 to the negative second goes to the top as 4 to the second. Now, I'm just going to simplify a little bit. 4 to the second is 16. Y to the 17th over -3 to the second is 9, +9, because -3 times -3, m to the 11th, n to the 16th. And this is your final answer. I hope that helps.